A look back now over the last 7 days and at the stories that made the headlines in Central Newsweek.
Hello and welcome to Central Newsweek. In the programme today, the price of going home, £56,000 to reach his own front door. A worldwide appeal for words that they've missed. And 40 winks up a mile high. A man has been billed more than £50,000 to use a lane his father built more than half a century ago. And the local council has warned that other people living nearby may also be charged for the right to get to their homes, as Richard Barnett reports.
Bill Matthews walks along a track on Bringsty Common near Bromyard in Herefordshire. His family have used the track to get to their home ever since his father tarmacked the lane in the 1930s. But when Bill built a new house to sell next to his home, he got an unexpected demand from Herefordshire Council. He was told he'd have to pay £56,000 for the right to use the lane for access.
I was absolutely amazed. I'd never heard of such a thing. Living on the common since 1930, building the road my father built, you were travelling over it for the last 60, 70 years, and then to find we have to pay to travel over the same track that we built ourselves and maintained for the last 60-odd years.
Bill sold the house and paid up, and now other people living on land at Bringsty Common, which is owned by Herefordshire Council, fear they may be charged for the right of access to their homes.
I hope not.
Can you give an undertaking they won't face those charges?
I can only give an undertaking as long as I'm in the position to make those undertakings.
The council will meet in the autumn to discuss its next move, but at Bringsty it looks as if commoners' rights may not extend to getting home without being charged for the privilege.
More than half the people living in one of the most affluent counties in the country are suffering mental health problems, according to health experts. The figure is twice the national average, as Gail Downey reports.
Tina Saunders has been trapped by a personality disorder since she was a teenager. In the past, she's not only deliberately harmed herself, but also attempted suicide. Now she's in a steady relationship and takes her medication every day.
I don't think people really understand how the people with mental illness really feel, because a lot of them live their life day to day very normally.
Michael Valier hasn't worked for 9 years. He suffers from depression, but is slowly putting his life back together.
I used to be a really happy sort of person, and I could, do most basic sort of tasks and things like that. I don't feel so confident now at the moment, but as saying that, I am getting better.
Tina and Michael's problems may seem extreme, but a report by Oxfordshire Health Authority estimates that half the people in the county suffer from some sort of mental health difficulty every year. It says in a typical street of 500 people, some will be suffering from anxiety, major depression, manic depression, schizophrenia, dementia, eating disorders or personality disorders.
What we're trying to do is to destigmatise mental ill health, mental illness. I think the worst thing is the image of the mad and bad, that everybody who has a mental health problem is actually dangerous. That is totally unhelpful.
The figures for Oxfordshire may seem bad compared with the national average of 1 in 4, but the local study includes a wider range of cases, and experts say all things considered, the county is doing well.
On Monday, an Italian aircrew described the moment when their display at the Royal International Air Tattoo last weekend almost turned to disaster. They were forced to make an emergency landing when part of a propeller came off. Jonathan Swain has the details.
It should have been a routine display flight. All seemed to be going well for the Italian crew as they pulled their cargo plane this way and that. But then, just 3 minutes after takeoff, the crew were faced with a potential disaster. A section of left propeller broke away, sending fragments flying to the ground and fragments ripping into the fuselage.
We heard this big bang coming from the left and right side of the fuselage. and then a lot of vibrations all over. We couldn't read the cockpit, not even one instrument. So we thought something to the engines.
The rubber part that came apart from the propeller just came through the fuselage, and we were very lucky that nobody was in there. There are some panels to protect, and as you see, one panel, this panel was found just like this, so actually something came into the fuselage.
Luckily, the fragments that fell out managed to avoid the crowd. An investigation will begin into the incident. Today, it was the skies, not the roads, that were busy around Fairford. Almost 500 aircraft took off for their bases around the world. When they'll return to Gloucestershire isn't known. The runway here is to be resurfaced, so for the next year at least, the events will be held elsewhere.
A bus company faces being fined and banned from some routes after a public inquiry heard that its services were frequently late and sometimes cancelled. Stagecoach blamed the problems on traffic congestion and staff shortages. Maria Coyle has the story.
Stagecoach, one of the two main bus operators in Oxford, was called to account by the Traffic Commissioner following a large number of complaints from passengers. Bus monitors employed by the Crown found on the X33 Abingdon to Oxford route 2 out of 3 buses didn't run. On the X39 route from Oxford to Heathrow via Wallingford, a large number of buses ran late. Stagecoach said traffic congestion was a problem and admitted deliberately cancelling buses on the X33 route because it couldn't recruit enough drivers.
We have had a chronic shortage of staff, which is continuing, but which we are addressing quite vigorously. And the second reason is down to the sheer volume of traffic congestion experienced on one of the routes in question, which was the X39 between Oxford and Heathrow.
Traffic Commissioner Christopher Heaps reserved judgment, saying he was minded to fine Stagecoach and stop the company operating the X39 route in future. He'd also want no additional services on the 105 route from Oxford to Wallingford, thus scuppering Stagecoach plans to run the alternative route. Whatever happens to Stagecoach could largely be determined by a test case involving a bus company in Scotland. It's appealed against a fine imposed by a local traffic commissioner. So a full judgment here isn't expected until September.
Noise from commercial airliners is making life a misery for residents of a small town. They say sometimes the planes fly so low they can even read the airline insignia. Mike Rowbottom reports.
Gillian Ovey is at the end of her tether. She reckons aircraft are passing so low over her house just outside Henley, she can read the airline name.
From 5 years ago, when there was nothing, no planes flying over us to land at Heathrow, it now has got to the stage that certainly weekends particularly, and busy periods, bank holidays and the like, it is uncomfortable to sit out in the garden. It was so last weekend.
Mrs. Ovey's main complaint is that air traffic has increased so much in recent years that planes are stacking further and further out of Heathrow. And she has support elsewhere. Planes did seem to come from every direction, especially at lunchtime.
It's like being in a dentist chair. You hear the slow rumble of an aircraft in the distance, and gradually it sneaks up, shakes the rafters of the house as it flies over your bedroom, and then it swells away towards Windsor to land.
The anti-noise campaigners say their fears are compounded by worries about yet another terminal at Heathrow and increased night flying. However, the Transport Department says the current night restrictions are among the most stringent in Europe.
Still to come in the programme, avoiding a nasty nip at feeding time. And the seagulls who have had their chips. The future of Oxford United is looking more secure after creditors voted this week to write off most of the club's debts. As Peter Baker reports, the club has been the subject of a winding up order.
The management and the supporters of Oxford United can breathe a little more easily after overcoming this latest hurdle. The club's creditors have agreed to accept what's known as a company's voluntary arrangement. Under this, they'll receive just 10 pence for every pound they're owed. And this includes the major creditor, Taylor Woodrow Construction. They stopped building United's new stadium at Mintry Farm in 1997 when the club couldn't pay its £6 million bill. Several of the creditors date back many years, to the time when Robert Maxwell was chairman. United are still subject to a High Court winding up order from solicitors Wallace and Partners, who acted for United's former owner Robin Hurd and who claim they're owed £66,000. But this now isn't life-threatening. New owner Firaz Kazam is playing down the importance of the creditors' agreement and says the decision isn't any cause for celebration. But it does mean Oxford United have finally managed to unload a huge debt, and their hopes are bright for their future beyond the millennium.
A hot air balloonist is safely back on the ground after a bizarre mile-high leap from a garden hammock. It's not the first time he's risked his life for a stunt, as Gail Downey discovered.
If you thought balloonist and pilot Ian Ashpole couldn't go any further with his sky-high stunts, you'd be wrong. This morning, flying over the Wye Valley, he did this for fun, parachuting out of a hammock a mile above the ground. Ian from Ross-on-Wye took relaxation to new heights in his latest piece of what he calls aerial theatre and a world first. It's not the safest way to fly, and his crew made sure the equipment was checked and double-checked before they took off.
I'm always nervous. I'm nervous when I get out of bed in the morning. It's going to be a lovely morning. It's stunning conditions. The hammock seems to have held up well after our rehearsal last night, so as long as we can keep the balloons steady, because last night we had quite a bit of oscillation through some turbulence, and it meant sometimes the hammock was almost in the vertical position, so I put a little loop in so I can hold on if it gets a little lively.
Ian is no stranger to this kind of stunt. In the past, he's stood on top of a hot air balloon in flight and also tried but failed to go round the world in one. In Ross this morning, another crew was getting ready for a balloon flight, but a more traditional one, taking paying passengers.
It's not for me. I'm not too keen on parachuting. It always seems to me that that's a very daredevil thing to do. I prefer the safety and security of my basket and my burner, so if I don't like where I'm coming down, I can go up again.
But however daring he is, Ian says he does put safety first. And although his parachute was useful for when he re-entered the real world, it was also there just in case anything went wrong. And thankfully it didn't.
It was incredible. It's a stunning morning. It was beautifully smooth up there. It was just relaxing, just what we wanted.
Absolutely delighted, yes. It was wonderful, and I was here to watch him land. And he was just so enthusiastic and bubbly. It was absolutely gorgeous. Yeah.
But Ian is never one to keep his feet on the ground, and within a few minutes he wanted to be off again. But his plane had other ideas. Fortunately, he keeps a spare.
Now then, one of the biggest names in dictionaries has put out a worldwide appeal for more words. Not content with having nearly 300,000 entries, they're scouring every English-speaking part of the globe to see if there are any more they don't know about. Here's Mike Rowbottom.
The Oxford English Dictionary is moving steadily towards world domination. It's recognised as the main authority for spelling and definition in most places. Now it's launching an internet site, and there's already a CD-ROM. But they're not complacent. There are 20 volumes in the Oxford English Dictionary. It has 291,500 entries. But that isn't enough for the Oxford University Press. They want more. They sent out across the English-speaking world for the new words that they don't know about. It's a repetition of the first dictionary 120 years ago, when the compiler sent out requests to the colonies in search of new words. This time, the compiler, Edmund Viner, is dealing with words like pants.
Well, this is a word that I've certainly picked up from my teenage children, and it seems to be pretty well established. Pants meaning that something is rubbish, something is of low quality.
Mega.
We can talk about things being mega, and actually I don't think I've ever heard anyone say it, but I think it is quite common, and I'm sure it'll go in, yes.
Mapapiri.
The word mapapir is a poisonous snake in Trinidad, very different from my sort of daily life. It's not a word I've ever seen before, or a snake I've ever seen before.
The newly gathered words will go into the third Oxford English Dictionary. But traditionalists need have no fear on one count. The OED may be on CD-ROM and the net, but it'll stay in book form as well. And that's the last word on that.
A group of young pythons who've been abandoned by their mother are being cared for at a wildlife centre. Although they're just a few hours old, they're still quite capable of giving a nasty bite. On Friday, I went along to take a peep. Perfectly camouflaged against its bedding, this Indian python is slowly making its entrance into the world at the Cotswold Wildlife Park in Burford. It's emerging from a clutch of eggs laid by a first-time mum, who, perhaps slightly taken aback by the whole experience of motherhood, needed just a bit of help to look after them.
She's had 6 eggs and all of them are hatched so far. 2 of them are fully hatched.
and the rest have just got the head sticking out. We're just waiting for them to come out. Initially, Mum laid her eggs and she coiled round them. As she's a first-time mother, she didn't show much interest in the eggs, so we went in, took them out, put them in the incubator for 2 months.
The pythons may be young, but they're already hungry, and Tim needs to have his wits about him in order to avoid getting bitten.
They're just miniatures of the parents. They're just ready to go out and eat as soon as they've hatched out. And some snakes, they'll maybe wait a few weeks or months until they eat, but these ones are actually ready to eat now.
Once they're adults, the pythons will be up to 2 metres in length, a process which could take anything up to 10 years. But for now, they're very much the juniors of the reptile house, although the other inhabitants are keeping a very wary eye on the latest additions. A city keen to rid itself of messy seagulls has asked its residents for ideas, and one man thinks he has the answer. All you have to do, apparently, is get a few huge loudspeakers and bombard the birds with recordings by Des O'Connor. Tim Hurst reports.
It's been the worst year for seagull pollution in Gloucester that anyone can remember. In early summer, they nest on buildings around the docks, and city councillors asked for suggestions to keep them under control. One man's convinced he has the answer. Large loudspeakers in the docks, a CD player, and Des O'Connor.
They come up to Gloucester, where the seagulls love to have their holidays. But the only thing is now they've got a bit of a clean thing going in Gloucester Docks, so there's not a lot of food left there, and the birds then go on into the city. Now my idea is to play Des O'Connor records, because we have it on good authority, Morecambe and Wise, who better, to play Des O'Connor music, which will get rid of anything.
So what do? You put loudspeakers here in the docks, play Des O'Connor, and what would happen?
Well, I think it'll drive them back down the canal.
Wouldn't it drive the visitors away?
No, it wouldn't drive them away. You'd be surprised just how many people do enjoy Des O'Connor, contrary to what you hear.
The city, though, takes the problem seriously. They want traders to put spikes on the roofs and window ledges of their buildings next year to discourage the birds. As for Des O'Connor...
I'm not sure about Des O'Connor. It would drive me away, but I'm sure I've got other ideas as well.
Where would you find the collection of records?
We'd ask in the City Council, I think, but if anyone did own up to owning Des O'Connor records, then we'd have to seriously consider disciplining them, I think.
Well, be that as it may, if Des O'Connor does have that effect on the seagulls, what will he do for the tourist trade?
Piccadilly of a day to do it on. I gotta move on the Buckingham beat. Go to King's Road, pick me up a nice, real sweet girl. I take her down, down, yeah. I take her down, down, I take her down, down.
Poor old Des. Well, that's all from Central Newsweek for now. We will be back, of course, at the same time next Sunday. But from all of us here on the team, have a lovely weekend. Bye-bye.
You have let loose a child abuser who's incapable of controlling himself and will probably offend again.
An error of judgment that leaves Frost out in the cold.
If a man you failed to arrest proves to have murdered 2 children, that amounts to neglect of duty.
You had the prime suspect and you let him go again. None of us go on forever. Maybe I'm losing him.
A Touch of Frost, tonight at 9 on ITV.
Will it be Hackenen at Hockenheim? We're just 20 minutes away now from our live coverage of today's German Grand Prix.
My wish is to always give you the most delicious of things, to share your world whenever you let me in, to know your look, to mirror your gaze and know your desire for the most delicious of things imaginable, and let your greatest gift to me remain just a touch.
At Currys, you'll find Britain's biggest choice of TVs. And now, it's even better. You can get Sky's free digital dish and box offer, you only pay for installation, and enter the great new world of digital TV. And we promise, if you find a cheaper TV price locally within 7 days, we'll match it on the spot. Currys, the choice for you.
Currys, the choice for you.
Football is my life. This is my home. And the last season was unbelievable. Now read how I did it in my autobiography, starting in Monday's Sun. And I'm already preparing for next season with the Sun's free 32-page colour magazine, Football Football, the essential guide to the coming season. I don't know about you, but I can't wait.
Extracts from Alex Ferguson's autobiography and free Football magazine, only in tomorrow's Sun.
Does a thinner pad give you less protection at night? Not always. As well as being ultra thin, Always Ultra Night are extra long, which means they have twice as much of the ultra-absorbent core that turns liquid into gel. So there's nothing to lose any sleep over. Always Ultra Night. Less pad, more protection, all night.
Hi. Dad, really? Why is Danny always late?
I've got to go.
Oh, let's get a drink. There's lemonade, orange drink, and some cola. Sunny Delight!
Yeah. Sunny Delight, the taste of tangerine, orange and lime, packed full of vitamins.
Oi, oi, here comes Loverboy.
All right. Oh, where's all the Sunny D gone?
Is this what you're looking for?
Oh, great. Thanks, Mum.
You're welcome, Loverboy. Oh, cool.
Nice one.
Sunny Delight, the great stuff kids go for.
Thompson Local. On the internet. The answer comes out of the blue.
Cats and dogs. Yes, you too. Here's a flea and tick warning. Are you protected with Frontline? Tell your owners the good news now. Frontline is easy to apply and can even be used for puppies and kittens and gives lasting protection against fleas and ticks even after bathing. Owners, wherever your pets go, protect them with Frontline. Available only from your veterinary surgeon.
I'm going to eat a whole Victoria sponge all to myself.
Oh, very clever.
Exceedingly.
Exceedingly good mini classics from Mr. Kipling.
How can something like this end up looking like that?
Top notch.
Two men take up the ultimate cookbook challenge, not knowing they're being watched. Enjoy a culinary extravaganza. Spice up your cooking life.
Beautiful.
With really good food, Monday at 8:30. Every day, we take things around us for granted. But how do we know that they're well made?
Well, we have to test them.
In the show which takes things to the limit, everything we buy, and even the money we pay with, is tested to destruction. Monday at 9, ITV.